sister-in-law played a mean joke that reminded me of a painful past experience. I got really upset, and my family decided to stop talking to her. Now, she's trying to make herself seem like the victim and turn everyone against me. Let me tell you about the situation. My husband, Aaron, and I have been together for 3 years, but we've known each other for 6. He has an older sister named Sophie, who's caused all the drama in our family recently. About 3 weeks ago, Sophie asked if I wanted to go on a vacation to Spain with her, my mother-in-law, and my husband's cousin Nadia. Nadia and I are close because we're first cousins, and we both went to the same high school. At first, I wasn't too keen on the idea of going on a trip with Sophie, but Nadia really wanted me to come, so I agreed. Sophie, who's pretty wealthy thanks to her neurosurgeon husband, was covering the cost of the flight tickets and hotel stay for our vacation. She's not bothered by the expenses because her husband's job brings in a lot of money. While she technically runs an event management company, it practically runs itself, and she doesn't really need to work. She just keeps up appearances to avoid being seen as a socialite who doesn't do anything. Despite having a degree in literature, she's never used it and feels like college was a waste of time, except for the part where she met her husband. Aaron mentioned that Sophie has always been spoiled by her parents, getting whatever she wanted since childhood. This attitude has carried into adulthood, with her thinking she can manipulate people with sulking and the silent treatment. Her husband and parents encourage this behavior, but Aaron, Nadia, and I don't tolerate it. While I've never been a fan of Sophie, I've tolerated her for the sake of family since she's never been directly mean to me. So I agreed to go on the trip with Sophie. And finally, 3 days ago, we were getting ready to leave. Since the airport was quite far from my house, I left early and ended up arriving about half an hour before our scheduled departure. With time to spare, I decided to pass the time by scrolling through my phone. Unfortunately, that morning my phone's vibration motor had stopped working, so I wasn't getting notifications like usual. I didn't have time to fix it before leaving, planning to address the issue once I got back from the holiday. Luckily, I happened to be on my phone when I received a message. It was from Sophie, who sent me a screenshot of a text conversation she had received from an unknown number. The message included an image and some text. Curious, I downloaded the image to see what it was about, as it seemed odd for Sophie to send me someone else's conversation. When I opened the image, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a picture taken right outside my house, showing someone holding a pair of scissors in their left hand. Almost immediately, I received another message from the same unknown number. "Let your brother's wife know I'm back." Sophie explained that she had received this text a few minutes ago and was worried about Aaron's safety. Hearing this sent me into panic mode. You see, I have a past experience of being stalked, which was the most frightening time of my life during college. I had a stalker who would take pictures of me from behind and send them to me all day. He didn't message me directly but used fake social media accounts to communicate. He'd suggest meeting spots but never showed up. Despite being trained in jiu-jitsu and never going out unarmed, I felt extremely scared. This went on for 2 months, and I kept it to myself out of fear. When I tried to stop him, he threatened me, saying I'd be in trouble if I told anyone. He even sent me a similar picture from outside my parents' house, holding scissors, to intimidate me further. Terrified, I didn't confide in anyone and just hoped for safety during classes. After a few weeks, I only left my dorm for necessities, and eventually, I stopped going out altogether because of the constant pictures. It wasn't until my roommate noticed something was off and pushed me to tell her that I finally opened up. Together, we went to the police to report the situation. Within a few days, they made an arrest, and surprisingly, it turned out to be a senior from the computer engineering department. He had a history of making girls uncomfortable on campus. Unfortunately, he targeted me due to his interest, using his cyber safety expertise to gather information from my public social media accounts. He was also stalking another girl who hadn't spoken up for the same reasons I hadn't. Once caught, he was expelled from college, putting an end to his harassment. Though his parents took him back home after a few days, he left the country soon after. It's been years since then, and I had almost forgotten about him until that image brought back all the fear. Without hesitation, I called 911. I urgently called Sophie to come over to my house right away. But I forgot to mention that I had already called the police because my priority was warning Aaron. Quickly, I hailed a cab and started frantically calling my husband, knowing he was likely still asleep at 8 o'clock in the morning, especially on the weekend. Despite the challenge, he eventually answered on the third attempt, sounding groggy from just waking up. With no time to waste, I instructed him to grab something heavy for protection, lock himself in the bedroom, and barricade the door. Although he seemed confused at first, mentioning the picture made him understand, and he followed my directions. I stayed on the phone with him throughout the 45-minute cab ride home, even as the police arrived and searched the house. During this time, I didn't check my phone, and without the vibration feature, I didn't receive any reminders from notifications. When I arrived home, the police were wrapping up their inspection, finding no one suspicious nearby. I was in the midst of a full-blown panic attack, and it took several minutes and half a bottle of water to finally calm down. The officers mentioned that they had checked the phone number in their system, which only came back with the name Thea Wilson. While this wasn't my stalker's name, it was entirely possible that he used a fake name for his phone number. At that moment, I had completely forgotten about Sophie and my phone, as my main relief was knowing Aaron was safe. The police informed us that they had dispatched 2 officers to apprehend the sender, following leads from the cybercrime department. Aaron and I rushed to the nearest police station, where shortly after our arrival, Sophie was brought in by 2 officers, crying uncontrollably. I'm sure many of you have already figured out what happened. And unfortunately, it's exactly what you're thinking. For some reason, Sophie thought it would be amusing to prank me this morning before our trip. A few days ago, she met a friend of mine from college, and during their conversation about families, my past stalker came up. This incident had made me somewhat infamous around campus, and despite not enjoying the attention, it seemed to have stuck in people's minds. After learning about my stalker, Sophie decided it would be funny to prank me on the morning of our flight. She used a phone number she had obtained a few days ago under a fake name specifically for this purpose. She texted herself an image that she had taken a few days prior, right in front of our house, holding scissors with an outstretched arm. Looking back at the photo, I realized the hand didn't belong to a man at all. Sophie had gone as far as removing her nail polish, making it difficult for me to notice in the midst of my panic. Fear clouded my judgment, causing me to overlook key details that hinted it was all a prank. But in the end, the trauma from my college experience overshadowed everything. The thought of reliving it terrified me, especially when Aaron's safety was at stake. It wasn't a laughing matter. Our ordeal ended with an embarrassing trip to the police station, where Sophie received a warning. Aaron and I had wasted time and energy worrying about my stalker's return when there was nothing to fear. Leaving the station, I was seething with anger. I'd unleashed my fury on Sophie for over 15 minutes, not caring as she broke down in tears. She had belittled something deeply traumatic and frightening for me, and her foolishness had embarrassed us all. She could cry all she wanted, but I refused to feel any sympathy. Aaron and I drove home that day, and during the ride, I filled Nadia in on the debacle. Even she decided to cancel the trip because, let's face it, nobody wants to spend time with someone as thoughtless as Sophie. The whole day was a struggle as I tried to calm my nerves after the chaotic morning and the lingering fear from the stalker scare. Even after learning it was just a prank, the terror lingered, bringing back memories of the darkest time in college. I kept mostly to myself that day, only speaking to Aaron and Nadia. I switched off my phone, needing a break from the chaos. It wasn't until 2 days later that I discovered my inbox flooded with messages from my mother-in-law and Sophie, accusing me of overreacting to the prank and influencing Nadia to cancel the vacation. I hadn't instructed Nadia to back out. I had only shared what Sophie had done. Her decision was her own, yet Nadia and Aaron managed to rally the family against Sophie, including her own father. Despite their belief, I hadn't spread any word about the incident. It was Nadia and Aaron who informed others, leading to the family's decision to cut ties with Sophie.
They claim I owe Sophie an apology for what they see as a harmless prank, but the consequences she faces are real and painful.
She's facing consequences from her own family, and now she's painting herself as the victim. After reading their messages, I discussed it with Aaron, who assured me there's no need for sympathy towards her. Neither he nor Nadia regret informing the family about the incident. What she did was undeniably cruel, far from a harmless prank. It wouldn't have been harmless if it hadn't triggered my past trauma to the point of incapacitating me for an entire day. We're all aware of the toll it took on my mental well-being. I fully agree, it wasn't harmless at all, leaving me paralyzed with anxiety. She didn't even apologize, only cried, so expecting sympathy seems hypocritical. She deserves the consequences of her actions. Initially, I planned to ignore her messages after discussing it with Aaron, as I had no desire to waste my time reasoning with her. However, she persisted in texting me repeatedly, clearly attempting to guilt-trip me into apologizing and restoring her standing within the family. It became increasingly irritating, and in a moment of frustration, I responded. I expressed my contempt for her insensitive and cruel prank, highlighting that she alone was responsible for her current situation. I clarified that I played no role in the family members cutting ties with her, though I wished I had, as it would have provided some satisfaction in removing negativity from the family. I concluded the message by referencing her weight, an area of insecurity for her. While I typically refrain from body shaming due to my own experiences with bullying, I chose to target her vulnerability in this instance to make her feel remorse. Perhaps my response was harsh, but it provided a sense of catharsis after enduring her relentless messages. Despite previously tolerating her spoiled and insensitive behavior, this incident exceeded my threshold for tolerance. After sending the text, I put my phone aside and tried to distract myself by watching a movie. It wasn't until 3 hours later that I checked my messages and found a new one from Sophie. She mentioned considering me a good friend and expected forgiveness without having to beg for it. While her message seemed to imply an apology, I found it confusing. She then criticized my response, suggesting that if I were going to be rude, I should have ignored her entirely instead of intentionally hurting her. Reflecting on her words, I began to wonder if I had gone too far. Despite my dislike for Sophie, I acknowledged that she had a point. Perhaps I shouldn't have said some of the things I did. However, her refusal to take responsibility for her actions and her attempts to shift the blame onto me only fueled my anger. I regretted stooping to shaming her for her weight, knowing firsthand how hurtful that could be. Nevertheless, I felt justified in calling her out for her behavior. Aaron believed I shouldn't apologize, asserting that Sophie deserved to be confronted. He didn't think I should sympathize with her at all. Nadia, on the other hand, felt I may have been too harsh. Feeling torn and unsure of how to proceed, I turned to the Reddit community for unbiased advice. I didn't want to resort to the same tactics as Sophie to seek revenge. While I value Aaron and Nadia's perspectives, I needed impartial judgment considering the circumstances. So I'm here seeking guidance after Scylla, in her attempt to prank me, inadvertently belittled my past trauma, prompting me to insult her insecurities about her weight. Update 1. I've taken in all the feedback from the comments on my original post, and while I appreciate everyone's viewpoints, I couldn't shake off the guilt I felt about my comment regarding Sophie's weight. So I decided to apologize to her for that specific remark. I stand by everything else I said, but attacking someone for their appearance didn't sit right with me, especially knowing firsthand the pain of being bullied for things beyond my control. I sent the apology just 5 minutes ago, although she hasn't opened it yet. Regardless, I'll be okay, even if she doesn't accept it because I know I did what I could to make amends. As for my mother-in-law, I'm not on speaking terms with her. It baffles me why she rushed to Sophie's defense when she knows her actions were wrong. Her texts were all about understanding my frustration, but then she expected me to apologize to Sophie, which doesn't add up. It feels like she's trying to guilt-trip me into feeling sorry for Sophie, but I'm certain she wouldn't have the same reaction if the roles were reversed. Aaron wasn't thrilled about my decision to apologize, but he believes in my good intentions. Nadia, on the other hand, is supportive and proud of me, so overall, I'm at peace with my decision. Update 2. Sophie has just responded to my apology. It took several hours for her to reply, but about half an hour ago, she finally did. She said it was fine, but she didn't expect anything better from me anyway. Sophie admitted to feeling a bit shocked, but understands that we were never friends and won't be in the future. On a positive note, she did express regret for attempting to prank me and for using such a traumatic experience against me. She claimed that if she had known the consequences would be so severe, she wouldn't have gone through with the prank. Personally, I believe pranks like that are disrespectful and should never be carried out, regardless of the circumstances. However, I appreciate the apology, even if it came across as passive-aggressive. Something is better than nothing, right? Now I can let go of the guilt I felt about my own harsh words and move forward. This incident marks the end of Sophie's presence in our lives, and that's the silver lining in this whole ordeal. Update 3. Hi everyone! It's been about a month since my last update, and I have some exciting news to share. Last week, Nadia discovered that she's pregnant. To celebrate, we organized a big pregnancy announcement party and invited all our loved ones. Well, almost everyone. Sophie was noticeably absent because she's been out of touch ever since being cut off from the family. She temporarily deactivated her social media accounts and went off the grid. However, Aaron reached out to his dad, who assured us that Sophie was okay. She just needed a break from social interactions. During the party, though, Sophie sent Nadia a text extending her best wishes for a happy and healthy pregnancy. However, the message had a hint of Sophie's trademark passive aggressiveness. She expressed a desire to be present at such a joyous occasion, but conveniently ignored the fact that she wasn't invited. Instead, she subtly implied that we were the negative influences in her life and that she was prioritizing her own well-being. We found her message amusing and decided not to share it with anyone else at the party. It's absurd how desperately she wanted to be included but refused to apologize for her actions. Despite hoping that her social media hiatus would lead to personal growth, it seems Sophie remains unchanged. Oh well, at least her message provided us with some entertainment.